Battling the Opioid Crisis, a town hall with ABC 17 News and Hot Talk 93.9 The Eagle starts now.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Battling the Opioid Crisis, a town hall meeting between ABC 17 News and Hot Talk 93.9 The Eagle. Thanks for joining us. I'm Marissa Holloway from ABC 17 News.
And I'm Brandon Rathert for Hot Talk 93.9 The Eagle. And we've been hearing from Mid-Missourians for quite some time now about this growing opioid epidemic. And I think more importantly, people have been wanting to know, how do we stem the tide here?
Yeah, and that's our goal tonight. Now, according to the Centers for Disease Control, nearly 600 people in the United States try heroin for the first time each day. Now, bump that number up to 4,000 people a day that are trying non-prescribed opioid painkillers.
As a matter of fact, right here in Missouri, about 1,000 people per year are dying from opioid overdoses, and that's just the prescribed opioids. The CDC tells us that roughly $55 billion a year is spent on battling this crisis, and that's not the illicit opiates, that's the prescribed opiates.
And we are lucky enough to have a wonderful group of panelists tonight who have agreed to join us for this town hall. We'd like to introduce State Representative Holly Rader, who is here, came all the way from Southeast Missouri today, so thanks for joining us. And also Troy Derby, thank you for joining us. He's a DEA agent from the Kansas City area.
And Dr. Brooks, that's how I know him, is Dr. Brooks. He's joining us here, and he has a unique story that he's going to be sharing with us tonight. And then we have a recovering addict who has been kind enough to come in. His name is Eddie. He's a local guy. He was in the throes of addiction for quite some time, and he's now been clean and sober for 4 years.
I think we'll start by maybe just kind of going down the line and telling us, you know, why you're here and taking part in this today. Ms. Rader?
One of my stepdads was a dealer, and but my children weren't raised that way. And so at 17, my daughter became an addict. And I think that raised in a two-parent home with, you know, both parents being in her business all the time. And so I think my story really shows the difference between, it doesn't matter what your background looks like, whether you're raised in the trailer parks or, you know, whether you're raised in middle, you know, America, two-parent home. And so I think that brings a different perspective to the issue. But then I'm also a state representative, and I've been pushing, fighting to get the prescription drug monitoring program passed. Missouri is the only state that doesn't have this. And so this is something that's been very important to me. I know that it's important to Missourians, and so many are suffering from our physicians just not having this important clinical tool.
All right, Ms. Rader, thank you. And Mr. Derby, thanks for joining us today. You're DEA agent. You know, tell us a little bit about why you're here today.
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. But I'm here to talk about this problem from a law enforcement perspective. What we actually do to fight opioid drugs from coming in, heroin, fentanyl, and just to talk a little bit about how dangerous those drugs are.
All right, Mr. Derby, thank you. And Dr. Brooks, we've spoken before, but if you'll let our viewers know a little bit about your story.
On June 2nd, 2015, I received a phone call from a neighbor of my son's who had found him unresponsive in his apartment, and he had passed away from a heroin overdose. It wasn't a month before that I had found out that he was actually using heroin. For months before that, I suspected that he was using something, and then found out early May of 2015 that he was using heroin. Got him into rehab. He was in rehab a month and then passed away 4 days after being released from rehab. I knew immediately when I found out he was using heroin that he was in for a fight of his life. You know, and we had real frank conversations about it, and he knew the consequences of what he was doing. He wanted to be clean, and he ultimately succumbed to the addiction.
All right, well, Dr. Brooks, we appreciate you being here. And Mr. Bonelli, if you'll tell us why you're here today.
I'm here just to hopefully spread some knowledge about prescription pill abuse here in mid-Missouri. I was a typical 15-year-old kid, started stealing opiates from my father. He passed away from an opiate overdose, and that's when I really started ramping up my use. I finally got in trouble with the law and was able to get clean for the past 4.5 years. So I'm just hoping that what we're doing here will change somebody's life.